Okay, welcome to the export panel at this year's virtual Wide Days. Music export has obviously become a huge thing in the past 20 years. Increasingly, the idea or the foundation of music export has been based around showcases as the music industry has moved towards live. And what we've obviously confronting now is the fact that that is that avenue for promoting talent and exporting talent has been very seriously curtailed. So what we want to look at with this panel is what alternatives there are, how different organizations are pivoting in the current situation. Should we be focusing more on sync and games, targeted radio and playlist plugging, and perhaps going back to the future where the export offices, like they used to do in the olden days, target record labels and media to build a profile for their acts in other countries before they actually go and play there. If we can, we'd also like to look at what other sectors might be able to join up with, be it tourism or fashion, and what kind of opportunities might be offered by virtual reality. So my name's Olaf Furniss. I'm the founder of Wide Days, and I'm delighted to welcome our panel who are joining us from various parts of Europe, including southern Italy. So yes, if we can bring them in, please. I think, Marton, I'd like to start with you because I forgot to ask where you actually are, because you're joining us from your holiday and have been swimming in a lake this morning.
Well, hello everyone. I'm Marton. I'm the head of SoundCzech, the Czech music export office, and at this moment I'm at Balaton-Endrét, which is like 5 kilometers from Balaton Lake.
Okay, well, welcome. What's just very briefly, what's the Czech Music Export Office and how long has it existed?
Well, Czech Music Export Office is SoundCzech, in other words. We are 3 years old organization. Prior to that, I used to be one of the initiators and, of course, members of the Hungarian Music Export Office that was found, well, quite a while ago. It was in 2004 that started. The Czech Music Export Office started in 2018 officially, and we had a 1 year pilot year to find out how to work. Already between these two offices, there has been 10 years of difference, so the topic has already been changed over time.
Okay, Géraldine used to work for the French Music Export Office. What's it you're doing now?
Hi everyone. So my name is Geraldine Zanaska, and I'm tuning in from Paris today. I normally live half in London, half in Paris. And as Olaf said, I used to work for Le Bureau Export for a number of years and the French Institute in London. And 1 year ago tomorrow, actually, I started my own company called Compass Music, which is an international music consultancy which focuses on international development for music actors, whether it's festivals, bands, or music businesses.
Okay, thank you. And Noor, you're on an Italian beach. Well, not literally on an Italian beach, but you're very close to an Italian beach at the moment. Can you tell us what you do?
Yes, hi Alan, and my name is Noor. I'm actually speaking from Puglia, southern Italy. I'm working from here. I'm program manager at Italian Music Export, which is the export office for Italy. It launched in November 2017, so it's been up for 3 years now, and it's launched by CIA, which is our collecting society.
Thank you. And Phil, I think you've been at your organization so long that you're on its third name change, I believe, in that time. Could you quickly introduce yourself and tell us what you do?
Yeah, I'm Phil Patterson, music specialist for the Department for International Trade currently. I've worked in the music industry all my life, bands, playing in bands, DJing. Then I worked in record labels, promotion, brand promotion departments, ran international divisions of different labels. And I just want to point one thing out there that you mentioned, Olaf, earlier about export being relatively focused in the last 20 years. Probably 25 years ago at EMI, the revenue budgets that I was targeted with each year were in the 20 million plus range. So it was a big deal back then as well. So now I'm obviously working with the government department to try and help British music export and British music companies to export and look for opportunities around the world, opening different markets along the way.
So to begin, Phil, what would you say was the main focus of your export initiatives and the expenditure by the DIT before the pandemic? Give us a quick snapshot of where you would typically channel your efforts.
Well, the revenue streams from DIT, we run trade missions around the world, targeting new and up-and-coming markets, if you want, like China and India, plus more obvious markets like the USA, where we run sync missions. We partner with the various trade associations here in the UK, whether it be the BPI and MPA for the LA sync mission that we run every year, AIM and the BPI for India and China, and various other things that we do. And we also run songwriting camps at both the LA Sync mission and also one every year in Nashville, where we invite a mix of up-and-coming writers to mix with more established and maybe people who've been in it for a long time, and then go out to Nashville to meet and work with a number of Nashville-based writers and producers. To briefs and everything else. So we try and look for the opportunities, and not, as you said in your introduction, not the most obvious things. We do some of the obvious things like showcasing. South by Southwest, we run the British Music Embassy every year, put a lot of money into that to make sure that all of the artists who are coming from the UK that we can fit into the venue have got the best possible platform. Because the most obvious thing to us when we first started was that people would spend maybe £5,000 to £10,000 of their money or money they borrowed or labels money or whatever, and they'd come out to Austin, Texas for that week to try and showcase. And they might actually play by the rules and only do the one showcase that they'd been invited to do at South by, but it could be to 3 Men and a Dog because they didn't market it properly and everything else. So we decided we're going to do something like this. We wanted to make sure they had the best opportunity, it was marketed in the best way, and we would try and make sure we had the best audiences in there.
That's great.
Facilitate what they're doing.
Thank you. And Noor, what would you say would be the main focus of your efforts? I mean, pre-pandemic, what were the main areas that you would really look to be exporting your talent and your I guess your rights holders talent as well?
Well, we've always worked on 3 or 4 levels even before the pandemic. One being essentially funding, of course, so funding for tours, showcase festivals. We also refund travel expenses for music professionals attending conferences and showcases. The other one being giving out information and helping musicians and the team working with them with setting up strategies for the export of their music project. And also education has always been a huge part of our job, because sometimes it's not even a matter of money, but it's a matter of knowledge, knowing who to go to, who should be your partners abroad, or even before that, where should you focus on as an artist who wants to export the music. And the last part, of course, is promotion. So we try to raise awareness about Italian music, not just the stereotypical classical examples that would come into your mind, so opera or very classical stuff, but also the newest things that are happening here in Italy. So also promotion, it's a big part of our job. So even before the pandemic, we differentiated a lot in terms of our focus in supporting the export of Italian music.
I'd like to come back to how you've changed and how you've revised your respective approaches in a minute, actually. But before I do that, Marton, how would you say your focus has been with SoundCzech, and I guess we could get the ball rolling. How has it changed?
Well, I think first of all, what Nur was just saying just now, I would follow up on that. Basically, we are doing similar actions, like the Italian Music Export Office, of course, supporting still tours and professionals to attend at events, and several other calls. We have actually also education sessions. But what is interesting with our activity is that one thing we can say is definitely not boring, because we are constantly looking for new ways. After the last year, with all the projects I was looking into, we have been at, as Czech Republic, which is a small country, we have been present at around 20 events. I cannot recall every. And every time we go, we always write a summary, what made sense, what didn't make sense, which way to go, how to spend better way, some budget, because of course we are limited. And also the meanwhile, we just simply noticed how many Czech musicians are actually used as session musicians, as studio musicians. For instance, also Czech orchestras are quite well known. For instance, just as an example, the last Thievery Corporation album was actually recorded in Prague with the Film Harmonics, with the Czech Music Orchestra, which are actually specialized on that. There's also gaming. So there are so many other aspects that the classical traditional ways of exporting didn't focus on, and I'm saying it significantly just to put the emphasis yet, because I think everyone is constantly looking for different ways to help not just the artist, not just the exposure of the music, but really to help to link the music sector. So for us, it was always important to look into, and the whole coronavirus issue just helped a bit to restructure how we see the Czech music sector as a whole, and to really incorporate from classical music to music instrument makers to festival to live industry and so on, because we are in fact sitting in the same boat there. There's no competition in between these fields. So
that's a really fascinating approach, because I think the idea of people think about export as going away somewhere to leave the country, but obviously if you've got rights or you've got recordings, they could be done in your own country. And places like Iceland have got a recording tax breaks for people to come and record in Icelandic studios. So work that's going to travel around the world is then being mixed, recorded, and engineered in Iceland, and it's another way of the technicians, or let's say the technical side of the music making process, also getting an international hearing. I think those are really interesting points to keep in mind. And I think it also ties in with what Phil was saying about the idea of songwriting collaborations happening between the UK and UK writers and writers all around the world. Again, you don't think the idea that you have to leave your town or leave your country to export is not actually applicable in all cases, and perhaps we've lost sight of that a little bit through the focus on artists playing outside and showcasing outside their countries. Geraldine, I've not brought you into this yet, but I'm really interested in what your take on this is. You know, you've obviously worked for one of the trailblazing export offices in the world. I mean, it was the first one I ever had contact with back in the late 90s. And, you know, at that point, they were very much focused on getting media coverage and getting releases for French artists and assisting that. I mean, with what you've seen before the pandemic, how things were done, and now how things are being adapted, what do you think's really the way to people should be going? What would you, if people came to you as a client, say, well, right, okay, I want to export my act. What would your advice be?
Well, I think the French Bureau Export, as one of the oldest and I think one of the most well-funded, obviously used to have before the pandemic a wide range of services that they do. I think they have over €1 million, which is directly given to artists through funds. They do loads of different things, and I think all of these services, even though they have been on hold through the pandemic, there's still other ways of kind of adapting. And I think one of the good things about the French Music Export Office is because they have such a large team, they've also been able to maybe be a bit more agile into power in numbers. So I've been taking part in one of their initiatives from something that they launched during the pandemic, which is called From Home Expert Days. And the first thing that they did was to replace The Great Escape, if I can so say. So one of the artists that I work with, Global Network, they were due to play The Great Escape. And because The Great Escape didn't happen, they kind of, to me, they were one of the first one that, to my knowledge, offered like a virtual online event that tried to recreate as much as possible what the bands and the artist team had missed through The Great Escape not happening this year. So they did a virtual showcase with some pre-recorded, some live, followed by speed meeting, the way that the Bureau Export often do at these events through Zoom. And I thought this was really good because the way that they did it, it was very personal. It was, you know, the people that were invited were very carefully selected, and it was really great because one of the results we had straight away was, well, Global Network was doing their showcases. The manager were receiving texts from German PRs and a couple of agents saying, this is great, would love to know more. And that was, you know, really brought the feeling of excitement to the whole showcase, even though we're all behind each computers. In terms of how the pandemic affects things, you know, obviously live and touring is not an option anymore. But we also discussed about, you know, pushing back releases and how to access PR and you know, media opportunities at a time where a lot of media have shut down. A lot of the free magazine in the UK have shut down. You know, so many journalists which are already not getting paid much, for a lot of them were completely out of a job, and it was really difficult to get any kind of coverage. So I think you got to be agile.
And I mean, in terms of what you would do, if someone came to you, what now, and what would your advice be? What would you say? You know, where should they be focusing?
It really depends on your objectives. And actually, I literally before this conference, I was on a call with a client prospect who wants to do an event, an export officer who wants to do an event. And I was having this discussion with them that how we can do it. You know, the world is a blank canvas. Like, you can do so many different things. you can reach more people, and you can try and make people connect in different ways depending on what your objectives are. So I think there is no one thing doesn't fit all, especially from my experience when it comes to music export office. And you got to go back to what do the bands want, what do the team, the potentially existing team behind the time wants, and what are your export objectives. And it can't be the same thing for everyone. So depending on what are your realistic music export objective on a midterm, do you want to go and tour? Do you think this is really the way that you're going to promote?
Basically, it depends on the genre. So yeah, I think that what is interesting is what I've picked up on is that pretty much everyone that I've spoken to on this subject has said that they've focused their efforts immediately into training, into upskilling their sector, be it, you know, managers or artists. And it does surprise me that hasn't been a condition before for people getting money, because I've obviously gone to loads of events, worked for loads of events, and I've seen acts played to 2 people where clearly no one's actually said to them, you know, if you're coming to do an event in Scotland and we're going to give you, you know, 20,000 krona or 30,000 krona or, you know, 3,000 euros to do this in support, then before you do that, we want to make sure that you actually know what you're doing. And, you know, be it from a promotion perspective, a preparation perspective. Do you think that as things shift, we're gonna see that taking part in that kind of training and that kind of preparation is going to become more conditional for support? And, you know, I mentioned a Swedish and a Norwegian example because they spring to mind, but I have seen the same thing with Scottish artists going to do The Great Escape because they've got a million streams on YouTube and just being utterly unprepared for that actual showcase. I think that you know, Noor, do you think this is something that you're gonna start introducing, that you are gonna attach certain conditions that might not have been there to funding, and people have actually they're ready to take advantage of these platforms?
Well, some of the funds we were giving out even before the pandemic already had this as a condition. I'm speaking about showcase festivals, for instance. So if a band or an artist has to play showcase festivals and they want us to support them, they have to undergo a training process first. So we train them, and first of all, we explain to them what a showcase festival is, because that's not something you should get for granted with artists and even with the teams. And then we explain to them what's the best way to, you know, make your time and efforts and money worth. So that's something we already did even before the pandemic. But after what happened in the latest months, we have decided to invest even more in education. So we, as many other export offices and music associations, started a series of online workshops, which are, of course, free for our musicians and music professionals, and we will try to invest even more time in this, even in collaboration with other export offices. And actually there's something I wanted to bring up before. The European Commission 2 or 3 days ago published a tender which is specifically on music export, and one of the tasks of this tender, it's about training. So I think we will see a lot of new and exciting ideas in the next following months and years, even because the European Commission is directly investing in it.
Marton, I mean, do you and Phil, I mean, obviously you're both aware of training is something that you both mentioned to me as well, and that development work. I mean, I've seen that's all across Europe, that's only as good as the organizations or the individuals doing that training and doing the teaching. But I think that in the UK there have been some incredible resources that have come out of different organizations in the past few months, from the MMF right through to the AIM Sync Summit and AIM House. What do you think this is going to become really become a far more established part of the fabric, be it export fabric or the the general music industry in countries, that this could lead to people actually really starting to take the need for upskilling and the need for learning new things as part of their job much more seriously?
Martin, do you want to
go? Yes, actually, the strange thing here is that as of the perspectives, as I'm Hungarian, I moved to Prague, so in this sense, UK music industry is something always for us was a well-developed system that we look up to, where many of the parts that are not even existing or existed before in these countries were already running for like 30 years. So that's one thing. The other thing is just a comment back on what I was saying before here now, as of how music export offices are working, and it's actually linked closely to Sync. Many of the export offices were still thinking and still hoping for then we're going to have the breakthrough artists from our country, and that will actually pull up and people will actually focus on us. It's not the case anymore. I don't believe in this that much. I think the artist level and the quality is still there, but actually we are living in an absolutely different world where mass communication is so much things all around, so it's just not realistic. But meanwhile, the bands and the skill sets are there. So in terms of Sync, that was already a case for us, where we really have to focus on more education and more to explain and to bring that closer to artists, and not just artists. I'm speaking about the whole sector, and that is that's a significant educational issue on one hand. On the other hand, I think I'm always saying that export offices are kind of the top of the iceberg. You really have to have a good music sector and the music industry in order to have any kind of export. And I really try to narrow it down to the way. And this whole unfortunate issue of COVID brought that up again, that how not to die of hunger in music industry. And that was already a topic at Nouvelle Prague when I was actually the director of the event, and I kept trying to bring it back. Because it's not just Sync, there are so many other things being wise in ticketing, using very well how to use the merch, planning tours way ahead and very cleverly how to bring it, how to self-produce your own events and so on. So yes, Sync and not just Sync, but the entire digital distribution and digital scope is crucial. And that's where we were at the moment when the COVID hit us, and then it actually brought back to reality. In reality, that means that hundreds of venues and clubs are closing. 130,000 people in Czech Republic were involved in music, and it's a dire situation. So that is something we have to look at. Also, on the other hand, there was a lot of live broadcasted events and concerts that, on one hand, it's okay. On the other hand, on a longer term, it's very boring for the public. So how can we make live broadcasted shows as excited that in the future even we could keep some? Of course, I believe that once this COVID will go away with the vaccine and so on, people will be eager to get back to their own old methods, but it will never happen entirely. So it also gave us a possibility in terms of all the other aspects, like what we're doing now, that conference is partly going to digital, events are focusing on to documenting better, putting there on some excitement and all the other aspects.
So, I mean, what I think is interesting with this, and it is to, you know, I was having we had a directors meeting in early February where I was, you know, saying we need to discuss this coronavirus because it's probably going to reach our shores soon as well. And you know, it obviously ended up being far more extreme than even a fatalistic bastard like me had thought. But what I think is you know, going on that basis, you know, the idea, like you say, that people, even if they can travel, might be frightened to travel. They might not be able to afford to travel. They just, you know, they might not be able to because they can't get insurance. So there's so many different factors. So this idea of actually preparing and just totally pivoting is something that I'm personally, you know, really in favor of. And I think it's, you know, I think it's a kind of sensible way to approach this. It's also one of the reasons that I wanted to do this panel. I'm going to come back to sort of some of those, you know, return to some of those different ideas and those different strategies. Geraldine, you wanted to say something about education. You could do that quickly, so because we're going to have to fire on with quite a lot of different things after that as well.
Thanks. Yeah, I think I agree with everyone that education is absolutely crucial. When I used to work at the Bureau Export, I used to say that most of my job was to educate the French on the UK music industry and the UK people on the French music industry, because it just works so differently. A lot of it is just understanding that. But I just wanted to name an initiative by, I believe, MX Day, the Music Export Denmark, that I was aware of by its director a few years ago. And he was telling me that one of the things that they do, and I count this as peer-to-peer education, was once a year, they put most people that are involved into music export around the table, and they have a heart-to-heart discussion on what did they do and what failed. And I think it's really important because we work in an industry where failure is not really an option, and people don't really talk freely, openly about failures. And that's one of the things that I think to progress and have better music export strategy, you got to have this peer-to-peer conversation / education on, you know, what worked, what didn't, and how do we go forward from there.
Do you think that one of the things as well, one of the problems with this is how some organizations are funded? So they'll maybe put in an application for funding for 3 years based on one approach, and that if that fails, then essentially what they're admitting is that this has been it could be interpreted as they've wasted a big amount of money. And do you think that can stand in the way of organizations being more adaptable, or actually, you know, beyond the internal meetings of different export offices, actually admitting that stuff doesn't work? Geraldine, do you want to start with that?
Is it for me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think what I've witnessed over the last kind of 8-10 years now is when we do have new music export initiatives that kind of comes in the music export game, if I can say so. Sometimes I think we did see, especially 8 years ago, at the beginning, some people who came with like a big envelope of money, and they were looking at what everyone else was doing, and they were like, okay, we're going to put 30 grand on, you know, doing a focus country at this event, but without kind of preparing it so well. So sometimes it didn't quite lead to any kind of concrete opportunity, and that's a bit of a shame. But I think now, you know, because there's more conversation, people are kind of getting a bit away from that, and that's, to me, a good thing. I'm not sure if that answers.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I think it's an important question, and it is something where, you know, what I've thought about a lot is that quite often you'll have one organization that funds an export office, being a collection society or a cultural ministry. it's not so common to bring all the beneficiaries or all the potential stakeholders, be it a culture department, be it a foreign ministry, a tourism ministry, and then all the different music business organizations. And I wonder if that's by bringing in more organizations, or is this something that we should be moving towards, as you know, among the different export initiatives, to bring in as many of the potential stakeholders as possible, and you know, therefore also ensure that there's more power behind it. I mean, Noor, you're obviously funded by your collection society, but have you been making advances to other potential investors as well, so that you can beef up your efforts?
Well, I'm just beginning now, because as you may imagine, this whole COVID situation and interruption of all live music events has been a great problem, and will be a great problem for collection societies. So I'm just now starting to evaluate other options. And in the past, I've been working with the Italian trade agency. We co-funded some missions, and it went really well. So that could be an option. And of course, the Ministry of Culture could be another one. But just to answer your question, music export offices in Europe vary a lot in terms of how they're funded and how they are structured and organized, and how do they cater to. So this is something that also Marton can say. When just after the first months of COVID, we sent out a form to every export office in Europe to assess what was going on in their organization, and everyone had a different situation, which from one side it's a good thing, because that means that of course there's different panoramas and different solutions for each country, and from the other side it's very difficult to, you know, find even support measures that could work at European level. So I don't know how to answer your question, actually, because it really depends on each country, and how much money is there from the public side, from the government side, invested in culture and music, and how big the music industry is. So there's no singular, unique solution to that.
I suppose that, you know, what it leads me on to is another question of collaborating with other sectors. I mean, I set up a music tourism consultancy a few years ago, and I did some things with Marton at Nouvelle Prague last year, for example, but also a symposium in Iceland. And I think that those discussions were really taking place quite actively in 2019 and 2020. There were a lot of things that were meant to be happening. Now, obviously, tourism is I couldn't be in two worse industries than tourism and music. But what I think is interesting is to look at where there are synergies and where collaborations could come out of working with other sectors that have either been equally hit hard, but so that it comes together as more of a joint collaborative effort, or other sectors which people might not have thought of. And I want to bring you into this, Phil. I mean, obviously there's been work done with Visit Britain. The UK music publishes regular reports on the value of music tourism. And I'd imagine that with so much of that being live based, it's actually the gap in that is going to be really felt. I think people are really going to start taking the festivals and their contribution more seriously now. They're not happening, and that might help focus minds. Do you see potential for more collaboration with those sectors? And is that something that you're doing with your counterparts from other industries at the DIT?
Yeah, we try to always bring. I mean, when you think about music is everywhere. And without music, film, television, fashion, advertising, lots and lots of different sectors wouldn't be anywhere near as effective. And tourism obviously is something which, as you say, brings people to events, and the local community benefit greatly from that as well. So yes, of course, it's a huge opportunity, and within the UK, I think it's something like, top of my head, something like 250, 260 million pounds worth of revenue streams that come into it because of different tourism activities that the local communities get. I know that I live in Berkshire, where we're speaking from now, and Reading is the local festival every year here. And I think they say Reading benefits like something like 25 million from the people that come to the festival each year. And that's sort of 4 or 5 days at the end of August. So if you think about that and multiply it by the number of festivals around the country, and that's that's just sort of main contemporary music festivals without going into all of the things that you've been talking about. But looking at other areas as well, I mean, you talked about, Martin, I think, mentioned earlier about instruments, manufacturers, and all. What we try and do at DIT is bring all of the opportunities that are available to music industry into the other areas. So manufacturers, say Loudon Guitars, for example, in Belfast, we've worked quite a bit with them in recent years, where they've come and sponsored songwriting camps. They've sponsored showcases, bringing their guitars to the event and everything else. And off the back of that, people discover the guitar their guitars and start and work with them. We've worked with violin manufacturers in the classical area. There's lots of different ways in which you can look at it and try and bring the people. Advertising sector as well, we're working very closely with the specialist at DIT for the advertising sector to try and get more involved and get them to use more British music in advertising and collaborations from day one, rather than it being an afterthought, which it is often with music, with movies, television, and advertising. It's sort of almost the last thing on the budget list. Like, okay, we need some music. And I think that as long as we can try and focus people's attentions on that, and obviously the last 3 or 4 months have helped us to be able to bring people's minds to think that way as well, to focus their attention on working with someone around the corner. Often with the trade missions that we find that whilst we're taking a bunch of 20 to 30 companies to wherever in the world, we find quite often that 2 or 3 of them will end up working together, and they might not have even met each other, and yet they live in the same city in the UK or whatever. And it's so all of a sudden they're starting to develop business opportunities that way as well. And I think that there are many ways of looking at all of this, and I think that the COVID focus has made people hopefully think outside the box and develop those ideas, whether it be tourism or anything else.
Noor and Marton, have you had any of those kind of discussions with other industries, with other sectors? Have you started to look at where there might be some synergies, or where you could come up with collective efforts? I mean, I think that the advertising thing's such a no-brainer to me, but as Phil says, often it's an afterthought. But the idea that if a sector which is strong like film in Italy can use Italian music, then already that's exposing Italian music to audiences all around the world. I start with you, Noor. Are those conversations that you've been having?
Well, regarding movies and cinema in general, I think that happens organically still. So up to now, we didn't have the chance to have a conversation with the audiovisual sector in Italy, nor with tourism or other kind of stuff, because to be honest, we've had a lot of on our plate. We launched our office 2.5 years ago, and we have a relatively small budget. So we used these first 2 years just to understand what were the best directions to follow, to establish a music export office in Italy, because contrary to Czech Republic, we didn't have any experiments in the years before. So that's really the first time for us. But I'm sure that will be in the near future, because as you all mentioned, the fact that it's vital that tourism and music and the audiovisual sector collaborate together, and it's almost natural. So we should be, more active in fostering this kind of conversation.
Marton, I mean, what about you? Have you had those conversations now? Are there any things on the horizon where you are going to be working with other industries, with other sectors to look at where you might be able to partner up?
Well, in Czech Republic from the beginning, when we put the program down, on one hand, and it's a funny link, as I'm Hungarian, as I had my experiences here, and I think I don't have to explain too much, but what I experienced and what I learned is that if you do an export office, and that was absolutely true in Hungary, try to work on the way that you cannot be shut down. So the way to do it is that you have to have as many partners as possible. That was absolutely true in Hungary, and I'm not speaking about the Hungarian export office now. In terms of Czech Republic, the life is much more easier, and there are much more professionally made decisions on political level, and that's all for politics. On the other hand, I do believe that it's just the most logical thing you can do. I mean, as I imagined, is that, and of course, I'm not digging in budgets of each of the countries, but in terms of Czech Republic, the money used to be there, and I hope it will be there in the future. The first point would be to create systems that are clever and intelligent enough to use the budgets as useful and as effective as possible. There are many programs and many fields, like for instance, film music. It was going on its own. People didn't even know who's writing for whom, and these sort of circles were running on themselves. But now we can see that many of these are linked. I mean, to create a system where from music instrument makers to school to education to club system, just a very quick note, because of the coronavirus and because of the platform we initiated, which is like the Czech live music platform, which incorporates the musicians trade union, the collecting rights societies, the music managers forum, the festival association, the independent classical music, and lots of other parts. Of course, the first question, how can we find common points and common denominators? Because I think anyone who tried to do this understood already that it's kind of a psychologist work to speak to everyone and go through and start opening eyes the way that, okay, we are sitting on in the same boat. We are heading to the same direction. If there are no festivals, the young artists will not be having possibilities to get on that level. But for them, in order to get there, there has to be a healthy club system. A club system was never visible. And I think in most of the countries in Europe, no one really knows how many clubs there are and what are their actual values. And once the coronavirus hit everything, and then you could see that the clubs are starting to close down. And we made some estimation and researches on what actually the financial impact of those actors were. It was amazing to see stakeholders and politicians to understand, oh, okay, so they are not just selling alcohol, they are the part of this whole music sector. And as it goes like this, we, of course, like everyone we collect always argues why it is crucial to have it. The European, as you know as well, I think many of you are aware that around 40% European tourism was cultural-related tourism, so creative tourism, one of the strongest argue. And what I just wanted to add, like if you look at film industry, the audio-visual industry, one of the most important differences is that they had numbers and the music never had really numbers, never took it seriously enough. If you have a car industry, you see from the beginning from who's making the varnish or the leather on the seats to who's doing the auto hi-fi and the MP3 players or the Bluetooth players in the car. All these are belonging to the industry. The music sector never had this in-depth, proper financial impact study, and that results in the simple fact that even the support system is not properly able to cover it because they do not count it relatedly into music. Sorry, I'm always shooting.
Geraldine, I wanted to bring you in because you had a point to make about festivals and regional festivals and partners.
Yeah, I was just want to say that obviously I believe that the more the merrier, the more partners the merrier, and there are synergies in the ecosystem that can definitely be found everywhere. And one of the examples that I have is Transmusicale, which is a French small major festivals that like to define themselves in Brittany that I work with, and they've been going for 42 years, and they've grown international in terms of their lineup very quickly on. And they are in the way that you can work in different export initiatives. So with Transmusicale, the French Bureau Expo is a partner, the French Institut Français is a partner, but also the town of Rennes in Brittany is a partner, the region of Brittany is a partner. So there's really different level of partners that make the whole international element of the festival possible. So I think in terms of regional initiative, I'm not sure if it's the case in every country, but I know in France it's quite strong that you also have musical regional initiatives, and more they're looking into how to export the music from the region and finding new ways of working with local events as such. So it's Transmusicale for Brittany, but you've got some in the north of France, some in the Lyon region, in the south of France. You just have to be careful that the more partners you add to this ecosystem, you just have to bear in mind that everyone's interest at the end of the day might be common, but everyone's objective would be different. So you just have, I think when you build a music export program or a project that has many layers of partners, you have to, then it's education on the partner side that even though you're working towards goal, not everyone is going to be able to have all that they want, but that you're working in the end towards one main goal, which is, if the music from this region country is known and the festival that, people were brought in to discover music in are like, it is, you want it to be a virtuous circle of music discovery, really, and music exchange.
I think you hit the nail on the head there. It is that thing of the virtuous circle and all the different elements actually pulling in the same direction. And this is something that's been it's been raised by Joe Franklin from PRS Foundation in the comments. And I want to mention as well, we've got some really interesting comments from Neil from Focus Wales, and another Neil Semple, who's a colleague of Phil, relating to games and how immersive tech is another area that should be explored further. And I just want to say that these are all things that we can elaborate on when we're in the bar area, the virtual bar after this session. Before we do, there are a couple of things that I was still keen to cover, and I think that one of them is, do you think there's going to be or are you already doing this, that you're, obviously it doesn't matter what music you're exporting, do you think there's going to be certain, let's say, genres or types of musicians that are going to benefit from this situation the same way that, for example, the chill out piano artists benefited from streaming, because they'd never have sold many CDs, but suddenly they're on all these playlists and they're raking it in because folk want to listen to them when they go to sleep. Whereas someone that would have sold, a rock band that would have sold hundreds of thousands of albums probably find it, well, in lots of cases, find it far less beneficial because the record company keeps most of the royalties that come in from streaming. So, I mean, are you thinking that there are going to be certain genres and certain types of musician that could benefit from this, and also you know, certain managers or labels in that regard? Noor, do you want to start?
Yeah, okay. Well, yes, definitely, but I don't think it's a matter of music genre, but it's a matter of fans. Your fan base, are they used to interacting online, not just with the artists, but among them? Are they used to, you know, buy music online, or tip the artist online, or you know, be part of something, be part of a community online? All these questions are, I think, very important to understand who will be benefiting from this. So since the panorama has shifted online this month, and I think it will stay online for
Could I interrupt you there? Just summarize what I think you're saying here is that those who are best, you know, it's not so much genre based, it's those who are best prepared, those who are, you know, moving into that online world, and, you know, it's equipping people with that, you know, the possibilities that come out of that, which is, by the way, something we're going to be touching on with the leading artists session. We've got 4 minutes left, so just on that, very quickly, Marton, Phil, have either of you got something to say on that, with, you know, certain genres that you see are, or labels that are already kind of pivoting in this regard and kind of becoming winners out of the situation?
I don't think there's any particular genre. I think it's still, people want good music, and what's happening is people are discovering more artists because they've got more time to stream and just listen to new playlists. And so what's happening is a lot more artists are being discovered coming through that way. But I think it's good music people want. And it's never,
okay. I'm gonna stop you there, because that's so subjective, and it always comes up in the A&R panels that I do. Just be great, and I think there's so much crap music that's horribly successful. So there's always a kind of counter argument to that. But what I was going to say then quickly, there's a couple of things that I should mention, is that there's an initiative that Lisa Whittock and Neil from Focus Wales is involved in, which is a global artist initiative where artists are being brought together and are being mentored. And there's something called Postcards from Scotland, which is, again, helping artists from promote their areas. And I wonder, is there something cool that you picked up on, or that you've worked on, or that you're aware of that's been happening, and you'd say that, you know, might be worth our viewers taking a look at themselves?
If I can add actually one thing that I think it might happen, and I hope this whole unfortunate situation just simply speeds that up, is the development of VR solutions, virtual reality. I already saw really great concerts with Gargles, and recently we had a call, and there were already artists applying for properly made VR concerts, because I think that could be something in the future that would hold part of the viewers and the public, keep them home and have those absolutely extraordinary experiences as well. It's not a choice, it's just a site, it's another option and another alternative.
Well, and indeed, there's, you know, millions of people watch Premiership football all around the world, but hardly anyone out of those millions has ever been to Old Trafford, you know. So I think that, you know, there are other people that can be tapped into. How about the rest of you? Phil, anything very cool you've seen in 30 seconds?
And Jamal is a young composer and writer who came with us to LA last year, and is now working on his second album. He did a live stream of launch of the album last week, and really interesting, worth checking out.
Did Olaf froze?
I think you did, yeah.
That's the way to end the panel. Well, I have one. I'm not sure if that's the same one that Olaf mentioned, but it was the one where it was artists from 2 different countries were exchanging social media for like a day to kind of promote their music to a different audience, and it's something that Focus Wells involved in a global music match. I'm not sure if that was the same as the one Olaf mentioned, but that was pretty cool. I saw. Olaf, there's 2 of you.
Olaf.
He's back on his phone. No, have you got anything?
No, actually, I don't know if Olaf can. Are you with us, Olaf?
I am, yes. Something went wrong in that last minute, but I've now pivoted to my mobile, and I missed what Geraldine had to say, but no doubt she'll tell me in the next in the after event. So please come and join us in the bar for this panel. I think there'll be a lot of interesting things that can be added to this, and I'd really like, you know, the 2 Neils and Joe Franklin and anyone else that's, I think Martina from the Estonian export office is with us. So please come and join us, because I think there's a lot of things that we could discuss further on this very interesting theme. So thanks very much to everyone for taking part, and see you in about 2 minutes.
Thanks. Bye.
Thank you. Bye. Thanks.
Bye.